Rave to the Grave.
Hi, this is Vivian Host, and you're listening to Rave to the Grave, a podcast where we take partying very seriously. On today's show, I welcome Jessica Gentile, better known in the raving world as Jubilee. Although she is sometimes called Brooklyn's-based sweetheart, Jubilee's native land is South Florida. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, and all of the other places she drove to raves growing up inspires her music, which folds in influences from Florida breaks, Miami bass, grime, and dancehall. You can check out Jubilee's sound on her 2 full-length albums, After Hours and Call for Location, as well as her Magic City compilations and party series. And beyond that, Jubilee has an extremely deep backstory that includes doing makeup for Lauryn Hill, co-running the Night Shifters label, and beating out Wiz Khalifa and Wiley to win the 2016 Red Bull Culture Clash for Mixpac Records. She is also a complete wizard at social media. Jess and I have DJed together countless times and spent hundreds of hours on various dance floors in the middle of the night. We've even tried floor drugs together, so I knew she had some stories to tell. Welcome to Rave to the Grave. Thank you so much for being a good friend and joining me during our first pandemic together, the coronavirus. Hopefully by the time people are listening to this podcast, this whole thing will be but a terrible memory. But I know that it's been affecting you and a lot of other friends of ours who kind of DJ and make music full time. I was just kind of wondering, how directly is it affecting your everyday life and what's going on with your gigs?
I went from full-time booked for the whole year to starving artist in a matter of 8 days. Like, I was like, oh, I am good. I booked a vacation. And then, like, all of a sudden it was like everything is canceled. And, like, who knows what's going to happen? Last night, my boyfriend's mom insisted that she brings these vitamins to me and him. I walked 15 minutes to meet her at the train and came back home. And in that half hour, the NBA got suspended, flights to Europe got suspended, Tom Hanks got the coronavirus, and then Sarah Palin was on the Masked Singer to add, all in the same hour. And I was like, what's going to happen tonight by 9:00, you know?
I don't know. I mean, I kept thinking that being New Yorkers, we're kind of better prepared for stuff like this. But also being DJs, I mean, I feel like this is such an uncertain business. It's like what you're describing of going from totally booked to starving probably has happened multiple times to people who have had a career long enough.
Right. And it's just weird because when you play underground music, you're not making a lot of money. It's because you love it. You really have to like doing this and give up a lot of normal life things to make this happen. So when it happens, and I'm sure people have it way worse than me, so I kind of feel weird complaining about it. But when it happens to you, you're just like, man, I didn't do a lot of normal people things so I could play weird shit. And then it all gets taken away from you and you're like, okay, now what? I've been doing this for 10 years, so what the fuck am I going to do? New Yorkers know how to go in survival mode very well, or at least people that have lived here for a very long time. So I think it'll work out. But I'm not going to say I feel great about everything.
So I want to segue from this. This is kind of a wild segue, but stay with me here. I mean, you touched on it a couple times already, giving up kind of quote unquote normal things like a normal
apartment,
a steady job, a normal apartment, healthcare.
Yeah.
Maybe having kids and all these things to live this underground lifestyle. And I feel like when we both got into club culture and electronic music and raving, As compared to today, where it's like relatively mainstream. It's like everybody's parents know what electronic music is. Like you can hear that music all over every movie trailer. Festivals are hundreds of thousands of people, and like normal people go to them. I feel like when we got into this whole thing, it was like a very underground choice. It was something that you had to go find. And I was wondering, how long of raving and being in this underground culture did it take until you were like, you realized that you weren't going to give this up?
I don't know. It's hard to tell. I think I had that moment a couple times. I think that I didn't think about giving anything up until a long time. And then I think that when I realized I was making a living off of it and I like made my first album, I think I was just like, this is like the only thing I've stuck to, the only relationship that has lasted in my whole life. You know, I've done makeup. I've been really into drawing and art. I've been into like a million different things. And like, this is never going to go away. And the more years go by, or the more I listen to it, the more it's just with me. And it's funny because electronic music kind of hit here a little bit later than other places. And when I play festivals in the UK and in Europe, I see all these like old ass couples. And I'm like, that's because like they've been listening to The Prodigy and like all of this stuff since they were super young. I'm like, that's going to be me. Because they didn't get like, this is like a way of life for me. And like, it was so much more common in those places a little bit earlier than here, I find that like they're still going to these festivals and it's still a huge part of their life. So, you know, when you're younger, you're like, you don't think about the fact that it's ever going to end.
Yeah. I mean, for me, there was definitely a point in the rave scene, kind of all the police crackdowns and I guess everything that happened in the late 90s. I didn't feel like, though, the music's over, but I felt like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like going to these regular clubs, like after going to all these warehouses and these crazy break-ins and all this stuff.
Oh, yeah. I went to raves because I hated going to those things. So like Miami is Miami. And like, you know, you're out at the club with your girlfriends, your butt's getting grabbed a million times. And like, you don't really love the music, but like you do want to be out and dancing. And then like I kind of just got sick of like club antics a bit. I get it. You go to a club to meet women, but you were like constantly getting assaulted like left and right. And I think once I found raves, I was like, oh, this is like club music I like. And everybody's like, if they're touching each other, it's like consensual for the most part. And no one's pulling each other's hair and fighting. And I mean, Miami's just a crazy place. So I find that like the vibe was so much different. A lot of bad vibes did make its way into the Miami club scene due to drug dealing. But there's a lot of books about it. There's a book about it.
What's a book that we should read on that subject?
Actually, this guy named Umberto Guido, I believe, wrote this book. I don't know if I should be talking about this, actually. He wrote an article, and then I sourced that article in Vice. And then he did write a book, but I don't know if it's coming out, but he's working on a book about it because he's like the only person that knows the story. There was like a whole crew in Miami called Fever Crew. There were crews. I was like hanging out with them. So I wish that was like a documented thing.
Raina Russom and I were talking about how rave is sort of like this memory that it's like a collective memory that we all have, but because raves were so dark, it was really hard to take video in there, and we didn't all have camera phones.
Right.
You remember sometimes people would try to take a video in a rave and they would have this like light and, you know, people would be like doing drugs out, or eat off their face, and you would hate it, you know, if somebody was taking a video. But like as a result of that, there are these things that we all remember, we can all talk about and arrive at like what happened, but there's so little good documentation.
Because it was also so looked down upon. There was all the 2020 specials and all that new stuff that you were trying not to talk about it. Like you were like, yeah, we're not trying to document this. You know, it wasn't like that generation. We were just trying to like get there and like not get it shut down and not die, basically.
Okay, I guess we should go back a little bit for people who don't know your whole full bio. Where are you from in Florida? And tell me about the first rave that you ever went to.
I am from Coral Springs, Florida, now famously known via school shootings. And now I can explain where I live through that. Okay, so where I'm from is an hour. West Palm Beach is an hour north. And Miami is an hour south. And then like Orlando is like a little less than 3 hours away. So I was in the mecca of Florida rave, basically. I spent most of my time in Miami because I liked the break scene. And they had a small jungle scene there that was really good. That's still running, called Beat Camp. My parents let me do whatever I want as long as I was at my desk in the morning. So I went out to a lot of weeknight, like weeklies, which now, like, I was like, yeah, they're raves. And I was like, no, it's just like a weekly. So I was there like probably 3 or 4 times a week, which is why a lot of my music is based on driving, because there was a lot of like mixed. I would drive alone and just meet people from there, down there. In the beginning, the rave would start when the club closed. So like this like normal ass club would close at 4 and then reopen. And I guess not serve alcohol. I don't know why they would do this. Now that I think about it, I'm like, what are the logistics of this? What a nightmare. They would open at 4. And yeah, they would go till like 10. So I think the first like proper one I went to was actually at Club Boca, which was in Boca Raton, which is lulz. And LSD headlined. I'm pretty sure Icy headlined. It was right around Thanksgiving. I told my mom I was sleeping over at my friend's. My friend told her mom she was sleeping at mine. And I believe that was my first like proper rave. That went on for a while. And then because of the raves, the club stopped doing that. And then it moved to where it kind of floated. Like then it would be in a warehouse. Then it would be in a field. Then Zen Festival happened. Then South Beach started closing at 5. The reason South Beach started closing at 5 is because there were so many rave problems. So like if you go to Miami, the zones are all different. Like everything in Wynwood closes at 3. Everything on South Beach closes at 5. Downtown never closes. Like that little corner, space 11 in the corner, is always open. So like Miami is kind of a funny zone, like zoned place. And I remember specifically, I'll never forget, it was Thanksgiving weekend and some girl came up to me and was like, do you want Vicks? And like people used to rub Vicks Vapor Rub on them when they were on E because it felt really good. And I was like, sure. And she like rubbed them on my temples, like put it on my temples, and she just goes, happy Thanksgiving, and walked away.
Were you on E?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Actually, funny story. I was, but the first one we took were called double stacked E's, and they were just Excedrin migraine. So they were fake. Like someone gave us fake pills. And that was like a huge thing in Florida, was to like rip people off, like sell like just a sheet of paper for like $300 saying it was acid. And then like people would be looking for my boyfriend for 3 years. But yeah. So yeah, I was. And I didn't do a lot because I, like, you lived with me. I'm very like cautious even then of what I do in that world. So like, I think I invented microdosing. I would take like a little piece and then an hour later I'd take like another little piece just because I was scared. And then I remember Thanksgiving was the next day and like I didn't eat. And my mom was like, why aren't you eating? What did you do?
The Thanksgiving time rave is a classic. Yeah. I went to one that was next to like a Baco's factory. So it smelled really horrible. It smelled like, like rotting pig pork products. And then, some kind of break-in location. I think it was an Insomniac party. And I just remember everybody had taken incredibly strong psychedelics and it was getting on in the night. And everyone was like, how am I going to sit with my parents in like just a few hours?
We also had a rave the day before Christmas Eve called Candyland, and it's still running.
Whoa.
And that was another one. Yeah. No, actually they're very regular Florida raves. Future Sounds Breaks, which came a little bit later. But Candyland, every time I see the number, like every year, it's like Candyland 18. And I'm like, fuck.
So is this a Candy Kid rave or what happens at Candyland?
The flyer just looked like Candyland. And like, it's a breaks party. It was like your typical Florida heroes with like a big headliner, Bad Boy Bill. Like Sasha and Digweed used to put like headline a lot of the raves that I went to. They would go pretty trancy on the headliner. It would be like Electric Sky Church or like whatever. And like, I never was really into that. I just wanted to go to a rave. But then I found life in the side room, which was the local breaks room, which was a mix of like Miami bass and freestyle and breaks. And like, I'm still friends with some of those people.
So I heard you say once that you and AC Slater, who is also on this podcast, like to joke about how you risked your life to go to raves. And so I was just curious, if you could tell me about some times or some situations where you may have risked your life to go to a party.
There was a very large chance of me dying about 90% of the time, whether it was like someone shot a gun off in the place, or I took something I shouldn't have that I thought was something else, or we climbed a fence because we weren't old enough, or I wound up at some sketchy ass dude's house afterwards in Miami, or like, illegal parties like in a truck. Like that scene in Party Monster when they're like all in when they rent the truck. I'm like, oh God, I remember things like
a U-Haul truck?
Yeah. Like I feel like almost every time it was I probably shouldn't have been there, or like driving home on like coming down from like God knows what. Because like I said, I lived an hour away, which was another reason that like I was very careful and kind of nerdy about it, because I always had to go home or go to some weird guy's house that everybody went to. And I never really wanted to be around those people. Even driving alone, completely sober at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. in South Florida is dangerous. I don't even want to do it now. So I feel like literally all the time. Or like saying I was sleeping over my friend's house and like driving like 7 hours away and then like having nowhere to sleep because I was a teenager. So it's not like I could have booked a hotel, and then like driving home. Like things like that were like, but I had to go to Zen Festival.
What was going on at Zen Festival?
I think it was I think it came up like around Ultra, maybe actually before Ultra. And it was more of like the Central Florida outdoor field giant rave. We all had to find a way to go because like, hell no, our parents weren't letting us go to a field rave in Tampa. And then when Ultra started, it was pretty small. It was a beach party the first year. And then that turned into like its own thing. Ultra definitely was like all the ravers go, but it was like the first like corporate festival, unless I just was oblivious to other ones.
When was the first Ultra?
I feel like it was like 97 or 98, maybe. Rabbit in the Moon played, I remember.
Let's talk about Rabbit in the Moon.
I will talk about Rabbit in the Moon anytime.
So Rabbit in the Moon, I feel, is particularly important to Florida.
Yes.
So explain about Rabbit in the Moon to somebody that's never seen them.
They were like this kind of trancy, breaksy show, like a live act. Like they would do a different crazy thing every time. Like for a while, like Bunny, who was like the lead dude that would do all the crazy stuff, he would wear like an all Christmas light outfit and like give out 3D glasses to everybody. And like, I mean, it was definitely for a bunch of kids on drugs for sure. And another time he would like bring out a chainsaw and like make something spark. He would crowd surf. It was just like pretty like Prodigy levels of weird, but just on a smaller scale, I guess. That's the only way I could describe it. And they had this really, really epic remix of Sarah McLachlan.
Which you still play.
Which
are you
play,
resurrected?
And I will never stop playing. And people laugh at me. And then when other bigger DJs play it, someone's like, oh my God, I can't believe they played that. And I'm like, fuck off.
So you also probably went to this club called The Edge, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Edge is sort of iconic, and I feel like it doesn't really get talked about in the same breadth as other clubs like.
Well, The Edge was in Fort Lauderdale in like it was in the like city walk of Fort Lauderdale, which was like the like Chelsea Market,
So kind of like the outdoor mall situation.
Kind of, but it was like off to the side. And it was actually the reason I honestly, I would say that was my first rave. Now that that was like my first after hours clubbing experience, circling back to that. I saw a lot of punk shows there. I was really young and my dad would have to go with me because I wasn't allowed to go alone. And I would want to see a lot of punk shows. And then the place, it was like, it's still a venue. It's called Revolution now. And then those would close. And then 4 a.m. you went to The Edge at 4 a.m. and you actually had to be 18 to get in. And that's when we would climb fences. Or like, if anybody's listening that knows about The Edge, we would like find someone to like do the stamp thing, like hold their hand against ours and like, hopefully their stamp would wear off on us to get in there. And that place was crazy. Like people would just be sitting on the floor doing nitrous balloons. like, it's cleaned up now, but it was the things that went down there, and it had this whole outdoor area where like anything was going. And a lot of kids that were into punk when they were young got into raves for that exact reason. Like the edge was like where like NoFX would play, or like Marilyn Manson used to play there all the time. And then like they would find out that there was this crazy after hours, and it was kind of goth and Latin. Like it was just wild. I was super young for that. Like I shouldn't have even been there with my dad. I remember my dad's so cute. He would like bring me because he knew I really wanted to go, and then like hide. He'd be like, I won't embarrass you.
Wow. Pick up your dad.
Yeah.
In multiple ways. So how old were you when you were going to the punk shows?
Like 14, 15. Yeah, definitely.
You started going to raves?
Probably like 15, 16. Like I was like listening to all that stuff like early. You know, I never thought I could get in. And then you meet that one person. You meet that really terrible older boyfriend that is like, oh, you just jumped the fence or like whatever. And then like that happens. And then like you get to know everybody, and then they let you in, and then someone finds you an ID, and like it's all downhill from, and then you're sitting in the Rock Center on a podcast.
Years later.
Coming from all of that.
Well, if it's kind of an interesting time, you know, I think that the sound definitely of 90s raves, and even the look that was big in the 90s, it's like back right now.
Yeah.
So it's a funny time to be talking about all this stuff, because I think that people now are trying to, in some ways, recreate that thing that we experienced, but it's a different time. There's like,
yeah, definitely.
Law enforcement is very aware of what a rave is, but I'm always amazed actually here in New York, we have, and in LA as well. I mean, the underground party scene and the warehouse rave scene is quite strong.
Yeah. I mean, there's ride or dies for sure. The sound though, it's pretty cool because I'm just playing my old favorite songs. Like I played this like song at Nowadays by Rick West, who was this like West Palm Beach breaks dude, and like everyone was like screaming at Nowadays, and I was like, there is no way you know this. Like, and if anybody does, I will like give you my DJ fee. You know, like it was pretty funny moment. Like DJ Merlin in Miami had this song called Bring Your Love that I love. And I've been playing it every set. And he's just like, I can't believe you're playing this. Like I literally made this song 20 years ago.
So back to your dad for a minute. People should definitely follow you on Instagram, Jubilee DJ, and they can sometimes spy your dad's antics.
Yes.
For instance, he recently went to Burning Man.
He did. Yeah. He went. I don't think he doesn't use the internet. He calls Facebook ass face. He doesn't even know how to like email. I had to like teach him how to use an attachment. But he went to Burning Man with his friends. He didn't know what it was. So he just kind of went. Could you imagine just like going to Burning Man with like nothing, no knowledge of like really what it is? And he was just like, yeah, man, it was just crazy. There were like lights everywhere. And like I parked my bike by this thing, but then I lost my bike because the whole thing moved. It's just like everyone was naked. I heard Paris Hilton was there on a horse. Like everything he was saying was just like so funny. And then out of nowhere, he's like, and Flume was eating ass. And I was like, Dad, how do you know this? So I guess like that got around to him, which is kind of funny. And yeah, he was just telling me really funny stuff and apparently having a really good time, but also very happy to leave.
So do your parents, okay, some people who are DJs have parents who go to all their gigs, drive it. Like I know like,
yeah,
I think it's Hodge's dad will like drive him to Croatia to play or whatever. And then other people's parents have like zero idea. Your parents obviously know, but do they do things like comment on your friends' Instagrams or talk to you about what other DJs are doing?
No. But they'll text me if like some DJ's in the news. Like, who's Calvin Harris? They've come to some gigs. It's usually a bit too late for them, but they've definitely come to a few things. My sister's she's come to like Dirty Bird Camp Out.
But they did do a cool thing once, though, where So they found out, I'm going to let you pretty much tell the story, but they found out that you were going to raves.
Right.
And they said you could go, but you had to write a essay paper.
Because I was going to go to raves. It was my life and I was destined to go and nothing was going to stop me. And I think, I don't know, my parents are just really cool. And I never really knew that until I got older, but they were just basically like, finally, you have to understand that I was also like making them insane. I was hanging out with the worst people. They constantly thought I was on drugs, even though I kind of wasn't. Like I was hanging out with like really terrible people, but I lived in a middle-class situation where you were either hanging out with people that had unlimited spend credit card and a Lexus when they were 15 and didn't even have a license yet, or you were hanging out with like people going to raves that were just like not totally rich people. So like I was like right in the middle of that. So of course I was going to gravitate towards like the not mean people. My mom is a therapist and they were hippies in the 70s. So like 60s and 70s. They were constantly like protesting Vietnam and like they were those people. So my mom's not stupid. She's done her own amount, like share of acid and psychedelics. And so has my father. So my mom was just basically like, look, you can do whatever you want, but before you do anything, you need to write like 5 to 10 page cited paper on what MDMA does to your brain with like a works cited and like you have to like check out library books. And if you turn in that paper, we'll grade it and you can do whatever you want. And we might drug test you here and there. So that's what made them let me go. And it was smart. It was like, okay, I'm going to read all the stuff. And if I want to make that executive decision to put that in my brain, in my body, then like, fair enough, idiot, you know? And then it was funny because for a while, my sister would, every once in a while, my mom would drug test me. Again, she was a drug like therapist for substance abuse. So she would like randomly do it. And then like, I would wake up my sister, like, I need you to pee in this cup. My sister would do it. And then one day my sister eventually started smoking weed. And my mom only did this like 3 times, actually. She, it's a lot of effort to make someone take a drug test in the 90s and like get their results. And then like the last one I think my sister took, she had like started doing stuff. So we're like all at the dinner table and my mom's like, your drug test came out positive for THC. And my sister just kicked me so hard under the table. But my sister was definitely like letting people, they put an alarm on only my window, but my sister didn't have one on hers. So then like she was just letting weird people in and out. Like the master bedroom was like on the whole other side of the house. So like I was like doing God knows what, like 10 people in my room at like 4 a.m. We would like steal my friend's mom's car, but like didn't really have anywhere to go. So we would just like be like, oh, Taco Bell's open. We were just whatever. But my sister definitely assisted when she was young and like really innocent. So like she also was exposed to all this weird stuff, even though she was like literally listening to like Jimmy Eat World.
Back to the E thing for a second. I think I'm even nerdier than you are because nobody told me I had to check out the library books. But before I did E for the first time, I actually did read some books on it.
You didn't get an assignment. You just did it.
I didn't get assigned. I did E for the first time when I was 14.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, I think even at that age, I felt like really responsible for myself. I had my mom around and stuff, but I just felt like nobody really knew what I was into. So no one could really help me because they didn't know what I was getting into.
You were on your own for that one.
Yeah. So I read this book and actually I read several books. And then I was convinced at that age that like, E was going to change the world. And it was like the wonder drug. And probably it is if you took like a pure ecstasy, which has probably only happened to me like several times in my life.
2 times in like my whole time on this earth, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Like this thing that like, we were sold in a lot of ways. It was a therapy drug, so probably pure E could be really good for you. But these things like you were talking about, the double stacked,
those were just like whatever in a pill. Like,
yeah,
but it's funny that you say that because so I was early doing this, and then like literally the cheerleaders at my school discovered raves for 5 minutes and ecstasy. And I remember one of them running up to me and like none of these people were ever nice to me. I was never friends with them. And then all of a sudden, everybody wanted to talk to me about it because everybody wanted to do it. So like, I just remember this girl, Sue, running up to me and being like, I heard you ate a bad roll. She was like, I'm scared I'm going to do that. I'm like, every roll is a bad roll. Like, you're never going to have pure anything. Just accept it. And like, even when the drug dealers would sell it to you, they'd be like, this one's like 50% heroin. And you're like, okay, cool. You know, like there was like the way pressed pills are, like that shit was not it. So even if I was doing that report on ecstasy, like for my parents, that was on MDMA and not whatever cocktail of God knows what we were taking. Anyways.
Well, note to anyone out there that's at the beginning of their drug journey, this taking a little bit, seeing how it hits, and then, you know, take a little more is like a good strategy, especially if you don't know anybody that's actually taken the thing.
And also, there's a million ways to test your drugs now that like, and it's like an acceptable thing to do, which I think is very cool because no one's going to stop doing this stuff. And like, I think everybody should take MDMA. Like everybody should be on happy drugs, especially now. They should not be sharing anything right now, though. 2020. Yeah. But like, the testing is important. And like, I mean, when I first moved to New York in like 2003 and like dabbled in trying to find rave friends, Dance Safe was a thing. And like, they were being kicked out of everywhere and like only certain places would accept it. And now like, people are actually reaching out to Dance Safe like this year because of like all of these overdoses. It is cool that we're in these times that it's like, okay, this is like gonna happen. And you could buy these strips off Amazon to check for fentanyl and whatever.
So for people out there who aren't familiar, and I'll be posting a link to this with the podcast so you can check it out, but dancesafe.org is a really important organization, all volunteer organization where they set up tables at raves and at parties and they'll test your drugs and you're not going to get in trouble for getting your drugs tested. It's just so people can know what they're taking and make an informed decision.
They give you everything. They give you condoms. Like they just want you to like rage, but be okay. And shout out Mohawk, who comes to every party and is heavily involved. They have information on every single drug there too. Like you can go up to them and be like, "What if I take this?" And they're like, "Oh, here's a pamphlet." And they have like, you have to see their table. It's the wildest thing.
Okay, so me and AC were talking about how important the Rave backpack was, and how, you know, like almost everybody who went to raves all the time, you had a backpack. So what would have been in your backpack?
I had a Bats Maru backpack, which, as you know, like if you still go to my place, there's Bats Maru stuff everywhere. If you don't know who that is the Angry Penguin from Hello Kitty. Because me and my friends all had a different character. One was Keroppi, I was Bats Maru. However, I was way more 5,000 pockets than backpack. I was really into dancing in the circle. So I had very, very, very little things in my pockets eventually. Like I went through backpack for like 3 months and then it turned into like literally absolutely nothing on me except for like a $20 bill in my pocket. I took my car, I put everything in my car. I took my car key, laced it into my shoelaces because a lot of the times I'd be wearing like some sort of pants with no pockets. So I was very into like, I mean, you know, I might get down on the floor and break dance. And if I do that, everything's going to fall out of my pocket.
True. I don't know. I don't see too many people circle dancing anymore. I had a big phase of that as well. I was pop locking. I guess sometimes you see people shuffle in the circle.
Been to San Francisco lately because it still happens?
No, I haven't. I'm going to go back.
Yeah, I definitely just DJ'd in SF with Nina, Las Vegas. Yeah. And there was a circle and I was like, word. And I purposely played Jocelyn Enriquez, sorry. And then if I go to the Classic Breaks party during Miami Music Week, all the way to like the left or the right of the stage, the same people will be there.
The same people you grew up with, breakdancing.
Yeah, when we were at that weird party, remember when I made you go to the breaks party and we found the floor drugs?
I do remember.
That night, I was like, oh, this is like my childhood. I got to get the fuck out of here. This is like every weird dude that I knew, but now they're like 40 and this isn't right.
It occurred to me that when we went to that party, that is probably the last time maybe that you or I will pick up drugs off the floor and then consider doing them.
It's a different time now.
It's just not that world. And then we couldn't figure out what they were, and we had to get a friend of ours to weigh in.
Yeah.
I just remember doing a little bit of said thing and becoming instantly grumpy and being like, whatever drug this is that we've got, I can't do it.
Yeah, I think we just did it to like prove a point. I think we were just like, let's get weird. Just found this bag, which now that I think about it, in Florida is the dumbest thing that anybody could possibly do. And I can't believe that we did that, but I'd probably do it again.
So what is one of the weirdest or like wildest times that you ever had at a party?
I mean, I've seen a lot of things and some of them have been kind of traumatizing, but one specific thing that was like a huge turning point of like, I need new friends was like, everyone used to hang out with this guy named Dom. And Dom was like the older dude that was just like hanging out with a bunch of kids. You know, there's always one like older dude that has like all of the drugs and like has all these kids at his house. And now that I think about it, I'm like, what the fuck? What kind of person is like, oh, I'm just going to constantly invite a bunch of 17-year-olds over, even though I'm like 28 years old, you know? We used to hang out with a dude like that. And I wasn't really the biggest fan, but it was like where everybody wanted to meet up before and then like go to the rave and then come back after. And I remember him getting busted in line at this rave that was at this club called Baja Beach Club. And it was 4 a.m. and we were out in line and he got busted by the cops outside and he ate everything he had on him. Like, and I remember just watching it. Like the cops were like trying to take it from him. And he, like, I'm talking like crazy amounts of shit. And we were all like fucked up and we were all just watching like, oh my God. And supposedly he called my friend from jail like 5 days later and was like still fucked up. And I remember that happening. And that was kind of like a turning point where I was like, why? Like, do I want to hang out with? I just had a really terrible boyfriend that hung out with these people. Everyone thought he was such a badass, my boyfriend. And so like, I thought it was cool, but like really it was just like not cool. So that was like a really crazy thing that I remember happening. Trying to think of other things. The guy that my boyfriend that I had would rob people a lot. He would like sell them fake stuff. So like eventually he did that with the wrong people and like they were always looking for him. So he like had to stop going out because we would go out and he would see them in the corner and be like, I gotta go. But I was like, no, I'm not leaving the rave. Like I paid like $30 to get into this thing and like my favorite DJ is playing. So that was like also like a time when we started to break up because I was like, I'm not giving up the rave because you sold some guy fake acid, you know, like your fucking problem.
I think that you've touched on it kind of in roundabout ways, but what do you feel like doing all this taught you as a person? Either literally just nuts and bolts things, or like, did it teach you anything about human nature or the greater world than just that? I
mean, I think that I'm very good at smelling a terrible person like immediately. I've just seen it all and I'm always right. And same with situations. Like I always like, even like touring, like going to some after party or like some fucking weird promoter will be driving me and I'll be like, I don't want to be in the car with this person. It's definitely put me on like full alert just for life in general. And it's taught me a lot. And it's made me very skeptical of who I keep around me. And witnessing a whole bunch of weird, terrible, unusual stuff for my age definitely made me a bit normal when everybody started partying. When I got to college and like everybody started discovering drugs for the first time, I was like, I'm trying to get good grades. Like I've been down this road, like get away from me. I'm just trying to move to New York where like the real drum and bass is.
So you moved to New York in 2003. Did
Yeah.
you find the real drum and bass?
I mean, I think that when I moved there, it was like just dying. Can you believe that there was a full-on functioning drum and bass record store on Orchard Street at one point in New York City?
Yeah, it seems like insane that there would be a store that pretty much only sells drum and bass
in the Lower East Side,
New York City.
Like, to me, is
or anywhere in the US. And actually, you know what? I used to work at one in San Francisco that only sold drum and bass called Compound.
So crazy. Like, so I moved there when like it was like peak Liquid Sky. I think Liquid Sky had closed or was like maybe in its end of days there. And
that was an important raver store.
Yeah, and it was like a headquarters. Like, I was like, I didn't know anybody when I moved here. I was like, I'm just going to try to get a job. And like, my family's from New York. So New York wasn't a strange place to me. And I just wanted to be around music, like, and better people. Breakbeat Science was funny because it was a record store that I ordered from, as well as followed on the internet for a really long time. And then when I moved to New York, I joined the message board. And I'd already kind of been on the message board, but when you move to New York and you're on it, you realize you're going to see these people in real life. So that was like kind of a really cool community. Like, I went there, some people were in the store. Like, yeah, I just started going to things alone, kind of like, hey, will someone talk to me? And then like made some friends, and I'm still friends with them now. So I think that like my valuable raver friendships really came from New York. And like, I was very accepted in the scene where they were like, oh, new person that wants to listen to jungle, because there's probably 9 of them. Like, and like the shows were really good. And then like, you know, the drum and bass promoters gave me my first DJ gig too. I didn't move to New York to DJ. Everybody's like, so you moved to New York to break into the scene? And I'm like, no, I moved there because Florida's terrible. And it was an accident. I had turntables. Somebody thought it might be cool if I played some things.
What was your first DJ gig?
Direct Drive.
Ooh.
Yeah, at Rothko in the basement.
So Direct Drive is a very long running New York.
I'm not even kidding. I'm about 90% positive that you were playing the main room. You alone. Like, I'm actually pretty positive that you were. I don't know with who. I think you were like the direct support, as they would call it now. And he put me and Patty downstairs to just like play DJ Assault and like Detroit stuff and like Miami bass.
So you start DJing, you get this gig at Direct Drive, and then kind of what happens from there?
I mean, I think I just did a couple like little things like that then. And like, I mean, I wasn't like hustling for gigs. I was like terrified.
What were you doing?
I was working in makeup. Actually, my first job in New York City was at Henry Bendel. So I was working there. Yeah, I was just kind of DJing at home. And like, I had just discovered grime when I moved here because Boy in the Corner. And I was like, this is the most insane thing I've ever heard. But it was so hard to get access to that kind of music, which is why I think I became a fan of you. The only way I could like communicate with people was to join message boards. So I joined like some, I remember people being like, there's a girl in here from America. And then like through that, I learned about two-step, and then like dubstep happened. And early on, I was like, okay, this is as close as I'm going to get to grime. And then you guys were in Trouble and Bass and started playing that kind of stuff like later on. But yeah, I was just working in makeup until like 2009, maybe.
So one of the message boards that you eventually got on was this message board called the Hollerboard.
Yes, Diplo's message board.
Which there's actually a really great article that you and DJ Ayers penned for Vice if people want to read it and find out all about the Hollerboard. But it's crazy because here's this message board. It's like people kind of talking about tracks and whatever, but like so many people that were on this message board ended up becoming huge DJs.
Right.
Like notably Diplo, who at the time was in a duo called Hollertronics with a guy named Low B, who is also from Philly. Who else was on there? A-Track was on there. Flostradamus.
Mark Ronson was probably on there. Duke Dumont. Like so many people were on there. And if they weren't on there, they were lurking. Like because everybody was putting their edits on there. And I still to this day, man, I remember I was DJing in San Jose and it was Comic-Con across the street or Anime Com. And we were trying to like get in. And his course was like lined on the block at 4 a.m. And some random guy just comes up to me and he's like, I work here. I'll get you in. I was on the Hollerboard. I was just like, oh my God.
Like recently or back in the day?
It wasn't even that long ago. It's probably like 6 or 7 years ago. Like, it still happens because it was such a special situation, you know? And yeah, a lot of people got really big from it. Spank Rock. Also, Pooja, who is the editor of Pitchfork, was heavily on that board. There's like a lot of music industry people like on that board. And so at the same time I joined, I went to this show in Baltimore that was like TTC Mastercraft. And it was like a big link up. And I met like Bo and Emil, who had this awesome party in Philly for years called White Tees and White Belts. I met some people like that would take me to Hollertronics. I met Techie Latex, and I've been friends with Techie Latex ever since. So yeah, I met a bunch of people through that as well. So like, it was like an in real life, also message board kind of situation.
How did you find the Hollerboard?
Through the drum and bass message boards. It was like, oh, this other music is here. Cause I was on Dogs on Acid, which is a drum and bass message board also. And then Dubstep Forum.
This is interesting we're talking about this because I think that among our friends, we're always marveling that you are the one that is the best at the internet. And we're always like, how is just like somehow doing all these things in life, you know, making albums, DJing everywhere, doing all these things, and like still finds time to reply to all these people on Twitter and post all this stuff on Instagram.
ADD,
and it's like,
baby.
it's like you're literally have like a cable from the internet jacked into yourself. And it's funny to think about like you being on all these message boards back in the day and communicating with all these people. So you've actually just been doing this since the dawn of the 2000s.
Like, this was how I got good music though. Remember all the drum and bass DJs used to leave their away message on and say like, send dubs in their away message. So like the reason I was actually on those boards is because I was like, send me what you're making, because people were making a bunch of music and there wasn't like digital record labels. It was like you were getting like everyone's exclusives. So I was really communicating with a lot of people for that and for mixes. So the reason I was talking to a lot of people was just like I met Bok Bok on like, I think Dubstep Forum, because I was like, hey, can you send me a bunch of instrumental grime and I'll send you a bunch of Miami bass? And we did a trade. I was collecting music, and then it turned into like GIFs and lulls and like whatever, you know? And like at the time, like everybody was making those edits, like mashups and edits. And I was also learning to DJ, and Serato had just come out. So like getting MP3s was really sick because you could DJ with them. That was like very new. And then the Hollerboard had a section called air horns, whatever, where everybody would just post whatever. Some of it was absolutely horrible, but like a lot of it was like really good. And a lot of it was like people beginning to make a lot of tunes and wanting criticism. And like people would very nicely be like, oh, you should add this, you know? And I think that was like a really cool way of like experimenting with music and newer sounds.
I wanted to bring up the Hollerboard too, because what happens is like all of these people know each other and you're all together for these brief blissful moments where somehow everybody's all in the same place and you're all in the same parties or on the same message board. And then everyone starts getting bigger and blowing up and like splintering off into their different scenes. So it's like, I think sometimes from the outside perspective, people don't realize, maybe now they do because of Instagram and stuff, but people didn't really realize like, hey, all these DJs know each other. Like just because somebody is this huge EDM headliner and this other person is like this underground grime DJ and this other person is like making house music, and over here, a lot of times at a certain point, like we were all together. So
right. Yeah, definitely. And like you've known them forever. Like Wes. Like we've known Diplo forever, and like he's always great. And people are like, how do you know Diplo? And you're like, fuck. You know, but he was a part of this like huge movement that like grew like in like, I don't think people realize like when people are like, Diplo, I'm like, I don't think you get like how much work that man has put in for things to get to this point. Like a lot of things wouldn't be here like if that dude wasn't around, you know? And now he's in a cowboy hat, shirtless, but whatever.
I really don't understand Diplo's current look. So if somebody can explain it to me.
I don't think Diplo understands his current look.
I'm kind of like, I've asked a couple of different people and I feel like it's a Venn diagram where hopefully I will arrive at a point where I understand.
I fuck with it though. He's like, I'm rich and I'm going to wear this with this and I don't fucking care.
Someone told me, someone who knows him well, this is Diplo we're talking about, that they think that he's just trying to do a thing that hasn't been done before. So like combine like several, he's always looking to combine the things that like no one's done before or that he hasn't actually done before. So like him being into different genres, like people interpret that in different ways. But it all kind of is in part from him just wanting something new and wanting to like fuck with something that he hasn't done yet.
He's always been like that. And like, that's why Hollertronics was so cool. He was the first person I saw play Miami bass in New York. He played Two Hype Brothers and a Dog, Doo Brown, into Baile Funk, which I had never heard, but it sounded like Miami bass. And I was like, oh, who is this dude? I never thought I would hear the song in New York, like, or these songs or whatever he was playing. So like, he definitely, he was on the internet if anybody was getting on the internet getting music from people, it was Diplo.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a mixtape that he made, Favela on Blast, which is a Baile Funk mixtape that we all had back in the day. This was like kind of right before he started working with MIA and like then she started blowing up. This mixtape, influenced a lot of people in terms of finding out about Baile Funk from Brazil and like getting involved in that and then seeking out that. And like YouTube wasn't here yet, or like at least not in a robust way. It was still like this certain digging and discovery process.
Yeah. I mean, it's how I discovered a lot of music for sure. It was just their mixtapes and what they posted and what they were into. So it was just new. And like, there was no genre. It was like the first time everything was like, oh, I'm going to play this into this. And I was like, oh, that's nice. So it's not like all house all night or all rap all night. It's like this club song into this Baile Funk song. And like, that was actually very early on, like the first time that was a thing.
Yeah, what was called like open format.
Now you will call that open format.
A lot of people have done so many, including yourself, have done so many things in music before you blew up and then people got to know you as a DJ. Like not only did you work for Modular, which was like a very successful Australian label, but you also co-ran a label with Jason Forrest called Night Shifters.
Right. I started a digital label like early when like we just depended on blogs really for press and it worked. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I was down and we signed some really cool people. I mean, AC had a record on there, Cam Blaster. I put out my first collab record with Udachi on there. Yeah, there was a lot of really good music that we put out. And then I moved on to Mixpac eventually. That was also when I started to become friends with Dre. And then we were like kind of talking about label stuff constantly because I didn't really know what I was doing. And he was about to start Mixpac and you had started Trouble and Bass. So we were all kind of doing it. And then I like moved on to Mixpac.
Was there anything that you had learned from being involved with Modular Records and being involved in Night Shifters about like either DJing or running a label or not wanting to run a label?
I mean, it's just hard. It's not an easy thing to do. It's like everything is waiting on 10 other people. So like you want to get this release done, but you want it to have press and you're spending money and you're not making any money. And that's fine. If you like love it, you're not going to make money. And if you do make money, you don't know that you're going to. It'll be like a sync that you didn't know you were going to get or something. It's usually, if it's an indie electronic situation, a passion project. And once you start making the goal of making money, it gets terrible, usually. And you have to be careful because a lot of people are counting on you for their music to come out. So like you are really like just trying to push a certain person that you believe in and their art, but at the same time, like yelling at like press people or distributors to like get it out on time. And then you're taking a lot of blames as well.
So this Dre Skull that you mentioned, he's the guy that runs Mixpac Records.
Right.
And I think a lot of people who get to know Jubilee have probably gotten to know you in tandem with Mixpac. You guys won the Culture Clash, which is this huge event in London. You beat out Wiz Khalifa and Wiley and all of these like iconic crews with a crazy stage show. I'll be linking to that in case people want to watch all the insane things that you did there. And of course, you've released 2 albums with them and a handful of EPs. And we once all were roommates together in a
in a crazy loft,
pretty illegal loft in Greenpoint known as Bad Manor. Was it while we were at Bad Manor that you decided to start DJing full time?
I don't think I decided anything. I think it decided me. I think I got fired from my job and it was the recession. And I was like, I'm going to collect unemployment now. I was working at Studio B for Josh at Fix,
which is a nightclub in Greenpoint.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was way before its time. It would be thriving right now. I was just working there one night a week. And I had this like yoga hippie ex-roommate, Susan, that was like, you're going to tour and DJ. And I was like, that is not what I'm going to do. And it wound up being what I was going to do because like we couldn't get jobs. And it was like, it's going to be us now. It's happening right now.
I know.
I'm like, oh, here I am again, sick, but there's no unemployment benefits. So I was just like trying to work at small cash jobs and DJ and make like $100 on top of like what I was getting, you know? Yeah, so it just kind of happened. It wasn't real. It wasn't on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we always talk about, even when we're not on a podcast, is side hustles.
Yeah.
And how, I don't think that Tiesto has a side hustle currently. Maybe he does.
He's going to have to get one really soon.
Well, hopefully Tiesto at least has health insurance. He's from Europe. But I mean, you know, a lot of the DJs that you see and even people that are playing out all the time and getting a ton of press and they're headlining festivals, like have other income streams.
Yeah.
I think there's this perception when you're younger and you see all of these DJs or you're just getting started in the scene that you can just make money from that. And it's like sometimes you need to get these other jobs and these other things to stay afloat while you get to the next level of your career.
I mean, it's actually funny. Like I'm my mother's child. So I've always tried to do like 10 things at a time, even if I don't need to. And last year was actually the first year I wasn't doing other stuff. I think it's just everything extra I was doing just kind of like dissolved and I hated it. I did fine. Career-wise, I was like touring and DJing and doing great, but I didn't like it. And like this year I've been kind of trying to change that. And like I have some projects that I'm working on and some work that I'm doing. Like now that this pandemic is spreading across the world, after we record this podcast, I'm sure 19 other things will have happened. You know, I'm at my decade mark. So I'm like, what else can I do? But yeah, I've always felt more comfortable with side hustles only because I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket.
What is your favorite part of DJing and what is the part that you really, truly don't like?
I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't like. I don't really like traveling. I mean, who does? Like the actual act of traveling. I don't love it. I don't like Instagram.
What?
I hate it.
Big reveal.
No, I've always hated it.
What don't you like about Instagram?
I don't like that it is like become such a deciding factor on like bookings, like such a necessary thing. And it's become like the main medium. Make music, like the promoter's like, what's her Instagram? And you're like, do you want to listen to my album? You know, I don't like Spotify.
So what you mean
I guess you can't say that.
For people who are like not in this industry is that a lot of people get booked based on their social media numbers or even the way that they look.
Which is, trust me, I'll get like hit up and it'll be like, oh, we're going to go with this person. And I'm like, how the fuck am I on a list with that person? Like no shade to them, but like we are 2 completely different DJs. And it's only because they found 2 girls on Instagram. It is a thing. I don't feel like posting on there right now. The world is ending. I'm like, why do I have to post like a pretty photo? Like, can I post a flyer? Oh, nobody's going to like it. You know, like I like stories. Stories are fun, like Instagram stories, but the actual grid, I just like could not care less about. I'm a bit socially awkward, but I think every DJ is. But otherwise I'm playing music that I made and other people made that I love for a living. And that's pretty sick. my complaints are very minimal.
Especially someone like yourself where you play a lot of different genres of music, maybe even in the same set. So some people see that you are affiliated with Mixed Pack Records and they're like, oh, she's a dance hall DJ.
Yeah, that's my life.
And then some other people find you through something else and they're like, oh no, she's going to play rave breaks. What is your strategy when you go play a party where you really have to work at it?
Well, there's a couple of routes you can go with that. I'm never going to cheese it up that hard because that's not what I worked for 12 years to do. I'm not going to be a dick about it and be like, you're listening to deep stuff and I'm going to teach you something whether you like it or not, because I think that's ridiculous. I will definitely go in a certain direction of vocals and cheese it up in the sense there's nothing in my USB that I don't like. So I guess I would just play in that direction. There is also a specific thing that can happen where you will play the biggest pop hit that every basic Becky likes and nobody cares. And then you say to yourself, okay, nobody gives a shit what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to do my own thing because nothing like Rihanna is not going to make them happy. Drake isn't going to make them happy. I'm just doing my thing. And you know, that sometimes that actually works out. I mean, people are not going to love you everywhere you go. You know, I try to keep in mind that certain cities are different, but I like that. And I play a lot of genres. So if I'm in San Francisco, I'm like, I'm going to play some freestyle and some breaks because I know people like it here. But like, I'm not going to play that in like Dublin, you know? So it's actually kind of fun for me because I'm like, oh, I'm here and they like this here and I'm going to play this hit that they love. So those are kind of my strategies. The past couple of years, I've definitely gotten booked more for what I do and people know what to expect. But I've definitely had to say no to certain things that I'm like, they're not going to like me there. I just don't want to be up there in that situation. So like, this isn't going to work.
You know, it's so easy, especially with Instagram and especially with everything in this business, to compare yourself to other people or to get really concerned about what music is in right now, or like, you know, even like who you lost out on the gig to, or this other person is like doing way more than me, or they got the headline slot and I didn't. Like, how does one deal with that?
I mean, that happens to me a lot. So, but when I was little, I used to be in like commercials and do a lot of auditions and stuff. I always used to think they went so well. And my mom would be like, don't ever count on anything in your whole life. So I kind of like grew up with this like weird sense of like, I don't believe anything happens until the check is signed. And now when these like big brand things that go by Instagram hit me up, I just kind of laugh because I know they're going to pick someone like way skinnier than me and younger than me. And I'm like, why are you reaching out to me? Because then I'm going to see like my homegirl like, thanks, Prada, like a week later in a bikini. And now I just kind of pass it on to my agent. Like, lol, this person's reaching out. They probably had to reach out to 10 people and like narrow it all down. But yeah, it's definitely a thing. And it's definitely like a weird, you see who's getting hype for some really dumb reason. And you're just kind of like, oh, come on. But that's like anything that involves a front person or talent. And I can tell you right now, like we all think everybody has what we don't. And it is not that great, girl.
We got into this because it was the antidote to all of that. And so, and now somehow you do end up on festival stages and you do end up going forth for these campaigns. But at the end of the day, you think about it and you're like, oh, I wasn't intending to end up in this like mainstream.
I think about it every day because I'll like get like annoyed with something or like an offer I get that's like disappointing. And I'm just like, this isn't even like why I'm here. Now, why am I doing this? And the older you get, the more zen you get about it.
You know, we've also seen a lot of crazy shit. What is the last thing that is like music or party related that was shocking to you?
I get shocked kind of often when I go to other countries, specifically with people from the UK, because you think people get fucked up here. I was at Outlook like 2 years ago and Goldie was playing and it was like such a good vibe. And I saw this fight break out next to me of these two like big British dudes and like they were fighting like somebody killed their mom. Like, and I live in New York City and I've seen every kind of fight there in Miami in the world. And these people, the way they were punching each other looked like it should be illegal. And then someone was like, welcome to Brits Abroad.
I felt like I went in a time tunnel at one point to medieval times. Everybody was
girl.
like so wasted. At one point, they were all rushing the stage.
It is different.
I felt that it was ancient.
Yeah. And it's funny because also that last summer I played Annie Mac's festival, Lost and Found. I took Nigel, my boyfriend, with me to this festival, and we're on the EasyJet flight. And that flight, the EasyJet flight to a big festival and the Ibiza flight are the most insane. It is like lawless. And like the airline just doesn't care. And people are getting so fucked up on that flight. And I'm like, this would never fly at home. If people were acting like this on an American Airlines flight, like the cops would land it and like everybody, the feds would be there in like 2 seconds. I'm a little bit more well-known in London than I am in the United States. And I was wearing a mixed pack shirt and people were like screaming shit on me on the flight. And like all the DJs on there were getting really rowdy. And I was like, this is not what I'm used to.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of videos and it's like everyone is just standing in the aisle and screaming. And it's like, you're not allowed to even
rules.
stand in the
like,
aisle.
The best is everybody puts their drugs in their butt and then the flight takes off and then everyone's waiting for the bathroom so they could get them out. And like everybody knows what's going on. And you're like, the flight attendants definitely know what's going on. And you're like, this is just fucking insanity. This would like never, ever, ever, ever happen at home.
And then you just think about how many people are just
doing drugs from their butt.
Yeah, but taking the drugs out while they're just in the seat because they don't want to wait for the bathroom.
There's way more accepted drinking culture and drug culture there. And I think maybe they've just been doing it longer, so they're kind of better at it, but they're not better at it. And then like we got to Malta and like the festival is actually amazing. But like the people in the city, you know, they speak another language, so they just hear you speak English and they immediately hate you. And you're like, no, I'm nice, I swear. And they're just like, fuck these people. Because like they go in groups and just like destroy the town.
That's what I mean. It's like an ancient.
It's ancient.
Horrible. Wonderful. Horrible. Well, I was going to ask you what you're doing next, but we're out of time. And I think that people should just follow you.
Follow me.
On the Dread Instagram, Jubilee DJ, as well as Twitter. People can check out your website, jubileelovesyou.com. And they can also definitely check out your SoundCloud.
Listen to my music.
SoundCloud.com/Jubilee DJ. Jubes, thank you so much for joining me here on Rave to the Grave.
Thank you for having me.
Look, yo, I see you. I see you.
Waving.
I'm right behind the dude with the
I got a glow stick.
Rave to the Grave is recorded at the historic Newsstand Studios at Rockefeller Center in New York City. The show is hosted and produced by me, Vivian Host. Our engineer is superstar Joe Hazen. Our theme song is by Star Eyes. All additional music you hear in this episode is by Jubilee. You can listen to Rave to the Grave on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on this and other episodes, check us out on the web at ravetothegrave.org or follow us on Instagram at ravetothe.grave. Until next time, party on.